The funeral reception was winding down when Victoria made her move. I stood by the window of our family's sprawling Victorian mansion, watching the last guests depart through the manicured gardens. My father had been buried 4 hours ago. The grief sat heavy in my chest, but I kept my composure. Dad would have wanted that. Everyone, if I could have your attention. Victoria's voice cut through the murmured conversations in the dining room. My stepmother stood at the head of the antique table, glass of wine in hand, looking far too satisfied for someone who'd just buried her husband. I turned from the window. My older brother Marcus and younger sister Lauren immediately moved to flank Victoria, like wolves sensing a kill. I know today has been difficult, Victoria continued, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief, but Robert would want us to be practical. This house, this estate, it's far too much for one person to maintain. My stomach tightened. Here it comes. Marcus and Lauren will be moving in with their families. Of course, the West Wing has plenty of room. Victoria's gaze finally landed on me. Emma dear, I've arranged for a very nice apartment in the city, much more suitable for a single woman your age. The room fell silent. 23 relatives and close family friends watched, waiting for my reaction. I see, I said quietly. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Marcus added, crossing his arms. Mom needs family around her right now. You've always been so independent anyway. Lauren nodded enthusiastically. Plus you're barely ever here. What do you need a whole mansion for? I'd lived in this house for 32 years. Every room held memories of my mother, my real mother, who died when I was 12. Dad had remarried Victoria 5 years later, and my half-siblings had made sure I understood I was the outsider from day one. The apartment is already leased in your name, Victoria said, her tone final. I'll have the movers come Thursday. That gives you 2 days to pack your personal items. 2 days, my voice remained calm, despite the rage building inside me. Plenty of time. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. You don't have much here anyway. Most of the furniture, the artwork, the valuables, those belong to the estate. Marcus grinned. I'm taking Dad's study, already called dibs, and I want Mother's jewelry, Lauren added, referring to my biological mother's collection. It should stay in the family. That's when something inside me snapped, not into anger, but into clarity. I'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years, ever since Dad and I had made our arrangements, since the day he'd sat me down in his office and told me the truth about Victoria's plans. Actually, I said, reaching for my purse, I think we should wait for the attorney. Victoria laughed, actually laughed. Sweetheart, there's no need. Robert and I discussed everything before he passed. The will is very straightforward. Is it? I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text. What are you doing? Marcus demanded. Texting attorney Bradford. He should be here. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. Charles Bradford, that's our family attorney. Emma, I've already met with him. The will reading isn't for another week. I know. I met her gaze steadily. But there are some documents he needs to review with all of us. Today. This is ridiculous, Lauren huffed. Mom already told you. The doorbell rang. I walked past my stepmother, past my siblings, and opened the front door. Charles Bradford stood there, 70 years old and sharp as ever in his black suit, leather briefcase in hand. Miss Morrison, he greeted me with a slight nod. I came as soon as you called. Thank you, Charles. Please come in. Victoria's face had gone from smug to confused. Charles, what's going on? I told you we'd handle the will reading next week. Mrs. Morrison, Charles said, his tone professional but cool. There are matters that need to be addressed immediately. Regarding the estate, he walked to the dining room table and set down his briefcase. The click of the locks echoed in the suddenly quiet room. Everyone should sit, he said. I don't need to sit in my own home, Victoria snapped. Charles, I don't know what Emma has told you, but Mrs. Morrison, please sit down. Charles' voice carried the weight of 40 years practicing law. Victoria sat. So did Marcus and Lauren, exchanging nervous glances. I remained standing by the window, my heart pounding, but my expression calm. Dad had prepared me for this. Stay quiet, he'd said. Let the facts speak for themselves. Charles pulled out a thick folder. I'm here to clarify several misunderstandings about Robert Morrison's estate. There are no misunderstandings, Victoria said tightly. Robert and I were married for 15 years, under California law. Under California law, Charles interrupted. A person may dispose of their separate property as they wish. Robert Morrison's estate was his separate property, established before your marriage, and maintained separately throughout. Marcus leaned forward. But Dad owned this house, the properties, the business. Owned, Charles emphasized. Past tense. He opened the folder and pulled out a document. 3 years ago, Robert Morrison sold his entire estate to his daughter, Emma Louise Morrison, for the sum of $1 and other valuable consideration. The room exploded. That's impossible. Victoria shot to her feet. I would have known, Marcus shouted. Dad wouldn't do that. Lauren's voice rose to a shriek. I said nothing, just watched as Charles calmly placed the deed on the table. This is the recorded deed for the property at 1847 Maple Heights Drive. This house. Stud. Recorded with the county 3 years ago. Transferring ownership from Robert Morrison to Emma Morrison. Victoria grabbed the document, her hands shaking. Her face went from red to white, as she scanned the notarized signatures, the county stamp, the legal description of the property. This can't be legal, she whispered. It's perfectly legal, Charles said. Robert had every right to sell his property. The deed was properly executed, notarized, and recorded. Emma has been the legal owner of this mansion for 3 years. But why? Lauren looked at me with genuine confusion. Why would Dad do this? I finally spoke. Because he knew. Knew what? Marcus demanded. I walked to the table and picked up my phone, pulling up a folder of documents I'd kept locked away. He knew about the affair, Marcus. Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. He knew about the offshore accounts, Victoria. I scrolled through bank statements. The ones you and Marcus set up in the Cayman Islands. The ones where you've been funneling money from Dad's business for the last 6 years. You're lying, Victoria hissed, but her voice shook. Dad hired a forensic accountant 2 months after his cancer diagnosis. He found everything. I looked at Marcus. The fake vendor contracts you created through your consulting firm, the kickbacks, the embezzlement, $2.3 million over 6 years. Charles pulled out another folder. I have the complete forensic audit here. Robert Morrison brought it to me 3 years ago, when he decided to protect his assets, and his daughter. Dad knew he was dying, I said quietly, the grief finally seeping into my voice. He knew the cancer would take him, and he knew that the moment he was gone, Victoria would try to take everything. Not just from me, from his memory, from my mother's memory. I looked at the portrait of my mother hanging above the fireplace. Elizabeth Morrison, beautiful and kind, dead at 38 from a sudden heart attack. So he sold me everything, I continued. This house, the commercial properties on First and Main, the office building downtown, the vacation home in Aspen, all of it for $1, 3 years ago. Other valuable consideration, Charles added. Emma agreed to care for her father throughout his illness, to maintain the properties, and to preserve the Morrison family legacy. Lauren was crying now. But he was my father too, was he? The words came out harder than I intended. When was the last time you visited him, Lauren? Before he got sick. She looked away. Marcus, you came by twice in 2 years, both times to ask for money. I turned to Victoria. And you were planning this before he even died, weren't you? The apartment lease in my name, when did you sign that? Victoria's silence was answer enough. 6 weeks ago, I said. I found the paperwork in your desk. You leased a studio apartment in the worst part of town, and put it in my name. You were going to throw me out 6 weeks before my father even died. You went through my things. Victoria found her voice, redirecting to outrage. I own this house, I said simply. There are no your things here. Everything in this building belongs to me. The reality was settling over them like a fog. Marcus stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Fine, keep the house, but the business, Morrison Manufacturing, that's worth $40 million. Dad wouldn't have sold that. Charles pulled out another document. Morrison Manufacturing was restructured 3 years ago into a holding company, EM Enterprises. Emma Morrison is the sole owner and CEO. I watched my brother's face go pale. The business you thought you'd inherit, the one you told your wife you'd be running. I've been the actual CEO for 3 years, Marcus. Dad kept you on as senior consultant because he hoped you'd learn something, change your ways. Marcus laughed, but it was hollow. You don't know anything about manufacturing. I have an MBA from Stanford and 10 years of operations management experience, I said calmly. I've been running the company remotely, making the decisions while Dad was the public face. The employees know me. The board knows me. You were just window dressing. Lauren stood up now too, panic replacing her earlier entitlement. What about us? He was our father. We deserve something. Charles pulled out a thin envelope. Robert Morrison left his will with me to be read next week as planned. In it he leaves his personal effects, his car, and a sum of $50,000 to each of his children, Marcus and Lauren. 50,000, Marcus sputtered. That's it. That's more than you deserve, I said quietly. Dad knew about your gambling debts, Marcus, the $200,000 you owe to the casino. He paid it off twice. You blew through it twice. I turned to Lauren. And your shopping addiction. The credit cards maxed out in Dad's name. The personal shopper who bills $15,000 a month. He covered all of it, hoping you'd get help. You sanctimonious bitch, Lauren hissed. You always thought you were better than us. No, I said. I just actually loved him. I was there every day of his illness, every chemo appointment, every hospital stay, every midnight when he couldn't sleep and needed someone to talk to. Where were you? Silence. That's what I thought. I looked at Victoria. And you have exactly 2 days to remove your personal belongings from this house. Anything you brought with you when you married Dad, you can take. Everything else stays. You can't throw me out, Victoria said, but the fight was draining from her voice. I'm grieving. I just lost my husband. Did you? I pulled up another file on my phone. Because according to these emails, you've been in contact with Richard Pearson for 8 months, planning your future together, discussing how much you'd inherit when Dad died. Victoria's face crumbled. Richard Pearson. Marcus looked confused. The guy from the country club. The married guy from the country club, I clarified. The one Victoria's been sleeping with since last summer. Dad knew about him too. Charles cleared his throat. Robert Morrison updated his will 6 months ago to reflect these discoveries. Victoria Morrison is entitled to nothing from the estate beyond what California law requires for a surviving spouse when all assets were sold prior to death, which is nothing. I'll fight this, Victoria said, grasping at straws. I'll get lawyers. You lose. Charles' voice was firm. And Emma has extensive documentation of your embezzlement. If you fight this, she's prepared to press charges. The district attorney has already reviewed the evidence. That stopped her cold. However, I said, and paused. This was the part Dad and I had discussed at length. The part where I had to be better than them, because that's what he'd taught me. However, I continued, I'm not interested in destroying you, any of you. Despite everything, you were part of Dad's life, and he loved you in his own way. I looked at each of them. Victoria, you have 2 days to pack and leave. I won't press charges for the embezzlement if you go quietly and sign a document agreeing never to contest the estate. Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. Marcus, you're fired from Morrison Manufacturing, effective immediately. But your $50,000 inheritance will be held in a trust that pays for gambling addiction treatment. Complete the program, and you get the money. Plus, I'll write you a recommendation letter for any legitimate job you apply for. Marcus stared at the table. Lauren, same deal. Your inheritance goes into a trust for shopping addiction treatment. Get help, and the money is yours. And if we don't, Lauren asked quietly, then you get nothing. And I proceed with criminal charges against Victoria and Marcus for embezzlement and fraud. Charles pulled out 3 documents. I've prepared the agreements. Signed today, and this ends here. Refuse, and I file charges on Monday morning. For a long moment no one moved. Then Victoria reached for a pen. Where do I sign? 2 days later, I stood in the empty master bedroom. My bedroom. Now, the movers had taken Victoria's things that morning. Marcus and Lauren had come by separately, signed their agreements, and left without much conversation. The house felt quiet, peaceful even. My phone rang. The number showed it was from Morrison Manufacturing. Emma Morrison, I answered. Miss Morrison, this is Janet from accounting. I just wanted to say, we heard about your father, and about the transition. The whole team wants you to know we're behind you 100%. I smiled, the first genuine smile in days. Thank you, Janet. That means everything. Also, the board meeting is set for Monday at 9. They want to make the CEO transition official. I'll be there. After I hung up, I walked downstairs to my father's study. My study now. His desk still held his reading glasses, a photo of my mother, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I'd found it this morning, tucked in his favorite book. With shaking hands, I opened it. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've had to face Victoria and your siblings alone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I know you handled it with grace and strength. You always do. 3 years ago, when the doctors told me I had maybe 5 years left, I knew I had to protect you. Not because you're weak, you're the strongest person I know, but because I knew what Victoria would try to do, and I couldn't let her erase you from your own family legacy. This house, this business, this life we built, it was never about the money or the things. It was about family, real family, the kind your mother and I created, the kind you represent. I sold you everything because you earned it. Every day you came to work early and stayed late. Every innovation you brought to the business. Every time you sat with me during chemo and pretended my terrible jokes were funny. You earned this legacy. But more than that, you deserve it. Because you understand what it means to build something that lasts. Not wealth. Anyone can accumulate wealth, but integrity, purpose, love. Those are the things that matter. Victoria will fight you. So will Marcus and Lauren. Stand firm. The law is on your side, and more importantly, the truth is on your side. Take care of the business. Take care of this house. Fill it with life and laughter again. Your mother would want that. Maybe start your own family someday. Break the cycle. And remember, you were never the outsider. You were always the heart of this family. I love you, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Dad, I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Then I carefully folded it and placed it in the frame with my parents' wedding photo. The doorbell rang. I wiped my eyes and went to answer it. A young woman stood there with a clipboard, professional but nervous. Miss Morrison, I'm Kelly Zhang, from the Historical Society. We spoke on the phone about the Morrison House Preservation Project. Right. The project Dad and I had planned before he got too sick. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Let me show you around. As I led Kelly through the mansion, explaining the history of each room, the architecture, the stories behind the antiques and artwork, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just a house I'd inherited, it was a responsibility, a legacy, a promise to honor what my parents had built. The plan is to open the main floor for historical tours, I explained as we reached the grand ballroom. The Morrison Foundation will use the proceeds to fund scholarships for first-generation college students. Kelly's eyes lit up. That's beautiful. Your father must have been an incredible man. He was, I said softly. He taught me that wealth without purpose is just numbers in an account, but wealth used to lift others up. That's legacy. We spent an hour going over the details. After Kelly left, I walked through the empty rooms, making plans. The West Wing would become the foundation offices. The ballroom would host scholarship dinners. The gardens would be open to the community. My phone buzzed with an email. The subject line read, "From Victoria Morrison." I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. Emma, I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I wanted to say something. You were right about everything. Richard, the money, the plans. Your father knew, and he was right to protect you. I married him for the wrong reasons. I won't pretend I loved him the way your mother did, but I didn't hate him either. He was kind to me, kinder than I deserved. I'm leaving the state, starting over somewhere nobody knows the Morrison name. Maybe I'll figure out who I am without all the money and status. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that your father talked about you constantly, about how brilliant you are, how much like your mother. He was so proud of you, Emma, every single day. I hope you build something beautiful with what he left you. Victoria, I read it twice, then closed my laptop. Forgiveness would take time, if it came at all, but the anger that had burned in my chest for so many years felt dimmer now. Dad had protected me, not just with legal documents and asset transfers, but with truth. He'd shown me that real strength wasn't about revenge or destruction, it was about building something better. That evening, I sat in the study with a glass of my father's favorite whiskey, and called the one person who'd been with me through everything. Emma, my best friend Sarah's voice was warm with concern. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm ready. Ready for what? To live, I said. To really live. To take everything Dad built and make it even better. To honor Mom's memory. To stop being afraid of my own success. Sarah laughed. About damn time. So what's first? I looked at the architectural plans spread across the desk. The ones for converting the West Wing, for updating the business, for launching the foundation. First, I'm going to build something that lasts, I said. Something that helps people. Something that makes Dad proud. He's already proud, Emma. He always was. After we hung up, I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. The foundation needed a mission statement. The business needed a 5-year plan. And I needed to draft the announcement about the CEO transition. At midnight, I finally closed my laptop and walked upstairs. I paused at the master bedroom, still couldn't think of it as mine, and instead went to my old childhood room, the single bed, the bookshelf full of college textbooks, the desk where I'd studied for the GMAT. This room felt more like home than any mansion ever could. But as I lay in bed, looking at the ceiling I'd stared at for 20 years, I realized something. It wasn't about the rooms or the furniture or even the house itself. Home was the legacy of integrity my parents had given me. Home was the business they'd built with honest work and fair dealing. Home was the memory of my mother's kindness and my father's wisdom. And now, it was my responsibility to carry that forward. I fell asleep with the weight of that responsibility on my shoulders. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like purpose. 3 years earlier, the oncologist's words had been clinical stage 4 pancreatic cancer, maybe 18 months with treatment, possibly 5 years with aggressive intervention and luck. Dad had chosen the aggressive route, but he'd also chosen honesty. Emma, I need you to come to Charles Bradford's office tomorrow, he'd said the day after the diagnosis. There are things we need to discuss. I'd expected will planning, healthcare directives, the usual end-of-life preparations. What I hadn't expected was the thick folder of financial documents Charles laid out on his conference table. Your father has uncovered some concerning activities, Charles had said carefully. Dad looked older that day, the cancer already stealing his vitality, but his eyes were sharp. Emma, I need you to look at these bank statements. I'd spent 3 hours going through the documents, shell companies, fake vendors, international wire transfers. The evidence was damning. Marcus has been skimming from the business, Dad said quietly, and Victoria's been helping him. They think I don't understand technology, don't check the accounts carefully. How long? I'd asked. At least 6 years, probably since Marcus joined the company. We need to call the police. No. Dad's voice was firm. Not yet. First I need to protect you. That's when he'd explained his plan. Sell everything to me, make me the legal owner while he was still alive and competent. That way, when he died, there'd be nothing for Victoria to claim. Nothing for Marcus to steal. But Dad, the tax implications, already handled. The sale is structured to minimize taxes. Charles has made sure everything is legal and airtight. Why me? I'd asked, though I knew the answer. Dad had smiled, the first real smile since his diagnosis. Because you're the only one who actually cares about what we built. The only one who understands that this business isn't just about profit. It's about the 200 families who depend on those paychecks. The only one who loved your mother enough to preserve her memory. We'd signed the papers that week. The house, the business, the properties, all transferred to my name for $1, and the promise that I'd care for him and preserve the legacy. Don't tell anyone, Dad had insisted. Let them think everything stays the same. I want to see who they really are when they think I'm dying, and the inheritance is in reach. So I'd watched. For 3 years I'd watched Victoria plan her future with Richard Pearson. Watched Marcus embezzle and lie. Watched Lauren bleed Dad dry with her spending. And I'd learned how to run the business from the shadows, how to manage properties, how to build a foundation strong enough to last. Dad had given me the tools. The rest was up to me. 2 weeks after the funeral, the Morrison Manufacturing Board meeting started exactly at 9. I walked into the conference room in a navy suit, my mother's pearl necklace at my throat. 12 board members stood as I entered, a sign of respect that hadn't been shown to Marcus in all his years with the company. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, thank you for being here. I know the last few weeks have been difficult for everyone. Richard Chen, the longest-serving board member, spoke first. Miss Morrison, we want to express our condolences. Your father was a great man, and a brilliant leader. Thank you, Richard. We also want to express our full support for your leadership, he continued. Many of us have been working with you behind the scenes for the last 3 years. We know you're ready for this role. Janet Wilson from Operations nodded. The transition plans you've developed are solid. The efficiency improvements you've implemented have increased our profit margins by 23%. The staff loves you. added Michael Torres, from HR. Morale is higher than it's been in a decade. I felt the tension in my shoulders ease. I appreciate that. My father built this company on principles of integrity and innovation. I intend to honor that while also moving us forward. I pulled up the presentation I'd prepared. I want to share my vision for the next 5 years. For the next hour, I outlined the plans, expanding into sustainable manufacturing, implementing profit sharing for all employees, partnering with technical colleges to create apprenticeship programs. This isn't just about making money, I said. It's about creating value for our employees, our community, our industry. The vote was unanimous. I was officially CEO of Morrison Manufacturing. After the meeting, Richard pulled me aside. Your father would be incredibly proud. You know that, right? I hope so. I know so. He talked about you constantly, about how you were the future of this company. Richard paused. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you fight back sooner? Against Victoria and Marcus. You knew what they were doing. I thought about that. Because Dad asked me not to. He wanted them to have the chance to be better people, to choose differently. They didn't. No, I agreed. They didn't. But at least now, I know I gave them every opportunity. 1 month after the funeral, the Morrison House historical designation came through on a Thursday. I stood in the foyer with Kelly Zhang and the Historical Society Board, holding the official plaque. This is a significant achievement, Kelly said. Victorian mansions of this caliber are rare in California. The preservation work you're doing will benefit the entire community. I ran my hand along the carved banister my mother used to polish every Sunday. She loved this house. She used to say that beautiful things should be shared, not hoarded. The Scholarship Foundation is brilliant too, another board member added. First-generation college students need all the support they can get. My mother was first generation, I explained. Worked 3 jobs to put herself through school. She never forgot what it was like to struggle. That evening, I hosted the first Morrison Foundation Scholarship Dinner. 50 students, all first-generation college hopefuls, filled the ballroom. Their families came too, parents who worked double shifts, grandparents who'd immigrated with nothing, siblings who dreamed of following in their footsteps. I stood at the podium, looking out at their hopeful faces, and felt my mother's presence. Education changed my mother's life, I said. It gave her opportunities she never thought possible. She met my father in college, 2 scholarship kids who fell in love over late-night study sessions. Laughter rippled through the crowd. They built this house, this business, this life through hard work and determination. But they never forgot where they came from. They never forgot that someone believed in them when it mattered most. I paused, emotion tightening my throat. This foundation exists to be that believer for you. To say we see your potential, we value your dreams, we're investing in your future. The applause was thunderous. Later a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 18, her hands twisting nervously. Miss Morrison, I'm Maria. I just wanted to say, this scholarship means everything to my family. I'm the first person to go to college. My parents clean houses, and they work so hard, but college seemed impossible until today. I took her hands. What do you want to study? Engineering. I want to design sustainable buildings, structures that help the environment instead of hurting it. I smiled. Morrison Manufacturing has an internship program. When you're ready, I'd love to talk about bringing your ideas to our team. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? Great ideas can come from anywhere. My mother taught me that. After everyone left, I walked through the empty ballroom. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, the same ones my parents had danced under at their wedding reception. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo album. Pictures of my mother, young and vibrant, laughing with my father. Pictures of family dinners, holidays, normal moments that had meant everything. Then the more recent photos. Dad during his illness, weak but fighting. The 2 of us going over business plans in his hospital room. His last birthday, when he'd made me promise to live fully, not just survive. I'm doing it, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. I'm building something that matters. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Coffee tomorrow. Want to hear how the dinner went? I smiled and replied, absolutely. I have so much to tell you. 3 months after the funeral, the letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Marcus's handwriting on the envelope. My name spelled carefully. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Emma, I'm in rehab. Week 6 of a 12-week program. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I wanted to write to say I'm sorry, not because I want something from you. I know that bridge is burned, but because you deserve to hear it. I was angry at you for years. You were Dad's favorite, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I told myself that justified what I did, stealing from the business, lying, gambling away money that wasn't mine. But the truth is, you earned Dad's respect. You worked for it. You showed up, put in the hours, cared about the business, and the people who worked there. I just wanted the benefits without the work. My therapist says that acknowledging the truth is the first step. So here's my truth. I was jealous of you. I stole from our family, and I blamed everyone but myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. Marcus, I read it 3 times, then filed it away with the other important documents. Forgiveness would take time. Trust would take even longer. But it was a start. 6 months after the funeral, Morrison Manufacturing won the state's Business Ethics Award on a cold December morning. I accepted the trophy in front of 500 business leaders, my hand shaking slightly as I held the crystal obelisk. This award belongs to every employee at Morrison Manufacturing, I said into the microphone. To the workers who show up every day and take pride in their craft. To the managers who lead with integrity. To the families who support them. I looked out at the audience and saw Janet from accounting in the front row, beaming with pride. My father built this company on a simple principle: do good work, treat people fairly, and success will follow. Today we honor that principle. Today we prove that ethical business isn't just possible, it's profitable. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. After the ceremony, a reporter from the Business Journal approached me. Miss Morrison, there are rumors about family conflict over your father's estate. Can you comment? I smiled politely. My father made his wishes very clear. The estate is settled, and I'm focused on honoring his legacy through the work we do at Morrison Manufacturing and the Morrison Foundation. What about the reports of embezzlement by family members? No charges were filed. Sometimes the best resolution is allowing people the opportunity to make amends and move forward. The reporter scribbled notes. That's a remarkably gracious approach. My father taught me that destroying people doesn't build anything worthwhile. Creating opportunities for change, that's where real growth happens. That evening, I stood in my father's study, my study, and looked at the wall of achievements. His college diploma, his business awards, photos of him shaking hands with governors and senators. I added the Business Ethics Award to the collection, right next to his photo with my mother. We did it, Dad, I said softly. We're changing things. The house creaked and settled around me, familiar and comforting. Outside, the gardens were lit with strings of lights I'd had installed for the foundation's winter fundraiser next week. This house was no longer a museum of grief. It was alive again, filled with purpose and possibility. My phone rang, an unknown number. This is Emma Morrison. Miss Morrison, this is Detective Barnes with the District Attorney's Office. I'm calling about the Victoria Morrison case. My stomach tightened. I thought that was closed. We closed your complaint, yes, but we've received information from the IRS about additional financial irregularities. We'd like to ask you some questions. I closed my eyes. Even now, Victoria's choices were creating consequences. Of course, Detective. When would you like to meet? After scheduling the appointment, I sat at the desk and pulled out the photo of my parents, young, happy, building a life together. I tried to show them mercy, I said to the photograph. I really did, but mercy didn't mean ignoring crime. It meant offering opportunities for change, and accepting when people chose not to take them. The legacy my parents built wasn't just about wealth or property, it was about integrity. Even when integrity was difficult, I would honor that legacy, whatever it took. The phone rang again. Sarah this time. Hey, you sound stressed. Want to grab dinner? I smiled. Actually, yes. Let me tell you about my very complicated day. As I grabbed my coat and headed out into the cold December night, I looked back at the Morrison mansion. Lights glowing in every window, the historical marker gleaming by the front door, the foundation's banner hanging from the balcony. This was home, not because of the building, or the money, or the legacy, but because I'd chosen to fill it with purpose, with service, with the values my parents had taught me. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all.